right now. There we go. And I'm just going to see if Natalie'd like to say a few words.
Yes, thank you, Tracy and Julianne, for being here. I do appreciate the time that you're putting into our students. And Sydney and Fabiola, thank you so much for being consistent and showing up. Um, I know that the impact of these sessions can really change the way you see yourself as the person who handles your finances and how you make decisions. So I'm happy that you're here. We also have Alan Krita. Alan Krita, thanks for joining us this morning. I want to say that I think it's super important that you guys recognize that even if only 2 or 3 of you show up, we're still here to make sure that you get the knowledge that you need. And it doesn't have to be about, 50 people in the room, because impacting 3 people and changing their future is super important. So thanks so much for being here. And if you have any further questions about any of this stuff, since this is our last session, I believe you all know where to find me. You have my email. I'll put it in the chat box. If anybody still needs any co-curricular credit for this, for these sessions, you can email me and I can put together the co-curricular credit report for you. But all in all, thank you so much to JA, to the presenters, and we will look forward to, continuing educating the young men and women of the Mount St. Vincent University in how to manage themselves accordingly as it relates to, life decisions and finances and their future. So thanks for being here, guys. And if you don't see me, Alan Krita and Fabiola, I'll probably see you at dinner, but thanks for being here.
All right. Thank you so much, Natalie. And thank you to Mount St. Vincent and CUA for being our financial sponsors as well. So super excited to have them back on board this year. And Natalie and I are already talking about next year and what that's going to look like, which I'm really excited about. So Julianne, I'm going to turn it over to you to do your introduction, and then Tracy can introduce herself, and then we'll get right into it.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brenda. And Natalie for having me here, and Fabiola and Sydney and Alan. I want to get that run right. I heard Natalie say it and I thought, oh, maybe I can remember this. Alan Krita? Is it Krita in the last? Maybe Natalie, you can repeat it for me, or I hear. Yes, go ahead.
It's just as it sounds, Alan Krita.
She was just there about to give it to me. I'm sorry, you had your microphone off. Alan
Krita.
Yeah,
Alan Krita.
Thank you so much. Do adjust if I get it wrong, because I make it an effort. So thank you for having us, and for seeing you again, being together with you last week and connecting about that career exploration work and then changing world that we are in, about how we go about doing that. It was really wonderful to strike conversation. So as Brenda mentioned, I do like having as interactive a dialogue as possible. So I welcome that of the 3 of you, especially hearing that the 3 of you are such committed participants to your own learning and showing up for yourselves and for this initiative, that I would welcome you to help direct the conversation today. The focus being on really that going forward focus and thinking about decision making and goal setting and the what's next. So putting all these pieces together so that now forward you have a bit of a path. We'd really love to make the most of it by tailoring it to some of the things you may be thinking about. So I'm really pleased to have Tracy join me. Tracy is also a mentor with the Mentoring Plus strategy that I'm working with, and I am always appreciative of her mentorship and keen to have her join us today. So Tracy, I'll hand it over to you and you can introduce yourself.
Hi, nice to see everyone this morning. I'm glad to be here. It's kind of on short notice, so I'm going to fly by the seat of my pants, which sometimes is a great thing to do, because it reminds me that I'm resilient and I have confidence at the best of times, even though sometimes I'm faking it until I make it. So yes, so I'm a small business owner, entrepreneur, visionary, creative, whatever you want to call me. I've been 30 years in small business management, and I predominantly focus on creative well-being and community advocacy. I just retired from the Community Health Board. I guess it's been a whole year, just at the end of November, but I did 2 terms with them, and a lot of my work since having my daughter, who's 16, has been unpaid work. And I'm a writer, and I've done lots of projects around that, from producing a play to customer service workshops, you name it. So everything in between. I also do Reiki and combine yoga, and Reiki is a relaxation technique that helps the nervous system relax, which is great for people who are experiencing different forms of trauma and wanting their muscles and relaxation, that if they have any kind of residual myofascial pain, it can be effective. And what else can I tell you about myself? I'm glad to be here, and I'd love to hear more about what's happening for everyone in the audience.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Tracy. It's Tracy always has such a grounding presence too, so brings great perspective to conversation and always offers that grounding reminder. So thank you so much for that. And our conversation today is to look at that process of going forward. And I am not sure if I'm totally cutting script to invite participants to share first. I would love to ask the group about what your focus has been at this stage. We're kind of in that transition time of year. We get encouraged to speed up at this time of year, but I think that it's hopefully a chance to slow down. And often the New Year's Eve kind of focus, or the wrap up of a calendar year, helps us get in the mindset of thinking forward as well about decision making and some of our goal setting. So I would be keen to invite the conversation to actually start with participants in the audience to share about what is on your mind right now, about things that you feel you're in really current decision making about, or forward focused and starting to imagine in your goals that you're going to be making some choices around. So do we have any of you keen to or open to sharing a little bit of that? You can unmute, turn on a camera if you want, or you can even type it into our chat. One goal that you have? Exams. Yeah, Sydney. Primary focus right now is study time and time management. Oh my goodness. Good on you. Well, I am praising the 3 of you for showing up on a Friday morning to do this with us. So you have got some commitment for sure, helping to guide your priorities. So thank you for sharing that, Sydney. Yeah.
Can I say something?
Yeah, please, please.
Oh, it is, I think, kind of difficult this time, maybe for me, because we have many things that are important. For example, I need to be focused at school, because as an international student, we have a study permit and we can stay here as well as we do well at university. But also we have to stay working, or I have to work to get money for paying my fees. So it is kind of difficult because it's the both of those things are related. So yeah, it's a little complicated to decide which ones to take or to put in more important place. I don't know how to say it.
Thank you so much, Fabiola, for sharing that. It can feel like competing priorities, and all of them are priority, and it's really important to hopefully strive for balance and be assessing what balance feels like for you, because it's constantly ebb and flow, right? In this moment, one thing has to be a priority at this time and place, but maybe in your heart, another thing is a priority, and how to hold those things so that they're all getting the attention that they deserve. So you described a lot with being culturally adjusting, and also the commitments to work and study and family. Those are really huge, and finances. So you've done a great job of starting to touch point on all kinds of different areas of sometimes what I think of as being a wellness wheel. And we need to be remembering all of those. We can't exclude any of them. So, but there's a lot on the plate.
Thank you.
And focusing on studies and job searching. So simultaneously job searching as well. Yeah. Okay. Ladies who have your cameras on, does anybody else want to share some goals that they are working on, or things that are on your mind at this time of year, this stage of life? Brenda, Tracy, Natalie, you're all welcome. Then we have lots to play with.
Trying to find my unmute button. I think it's just a super busy time of year for a lot of people. I mean, at JA, we're wrapping up, we're wrapping up programming. This is kind of the last of this one, but it's just been a lot of work. The president has just headed to the Bahamas for her Christmas vacation. She's on the plane today. And, just all of the pieces that come with the holidays and the stress that comes with that. We're not big gift givers here, but I've spent the last week trying to get the house decorated. And again, it's just for me, like nobody else cares if I decorate the house. So it's sometimes trying to balance like my personal expectations and how I feel things need to be done versus who else in the family really cares how much I decorate, right? Like nobody. They might be upset if there weren't a tree, but does it have to be a 12-foot tree? Probably not, right? But I wanted a 12-foot tree. So sometimes yeah, exactly. So sometimes it's trying to just understand that a lot of the things that we do, and maybe this is a female thing, but a lot of the things that we do, we're the ones that have the expectation that it's going to be that way. The rest of the family may not. I think about it even in terms of housework. Like I like to keep my house clean. I like the floors done. I like the kitchen counters clean. But I also have had to learn to recognize that I'm the only one who cares how clean the floor is.
That can be a relief.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for sharing the word expectations. I think that that's a really important one that we keep in mind, because that might be what we have to assess again, and whose expectations, how old they are. Talked about traditions, beliefs and mindsets, and can become very deep set motivators, and we may not even realize that we're prescribing to ones that maybe we don't even align to, but we've been taught early on, or we've adopted somewhere along the way. We're holding on to expectations that we might be able to let go of if we were ready to. So thank you for that example. Tracy, did you have anything there that you wanted to jump in with, or Natalie, you're welcome to too, but Tracy, I just thought you might be keen to jump on some of those comments.
I can really relate because my tree is bare naked. I don't know if anybody can see it back there in the corner. And it's been there since Sunday. And I'm just saying it's a work in progress. And I have also been practicing, we talk a lot about the presence of gratitude and managing what I actually have. And I saw something the other day that said, stop and be grateful for something every 3 hours. And I've actually been practicing that this week, and it's helped me to kind of breathe and refocus. But what I've done is in my kind of to-do list, it's kind of like stopping to say, okay, I'm going to take the pressure off myself and do something for 20 minutes that actually gives me joy. So that might actually be clean the sink. And then there's that not compartmentalizing for me as if it's not all or nothing. And for me, it is just really about trailing my joy. Sometimes, yes, it's not joyful to clean the sink, but I really try to concentrate on, what did I put here? Like for my balance, it's like, where is their balance right now? And asking myself that. And it can actually be quite surprising when I check in and see where I actually have the balance. And the balance may be the tree is up, and it doesn't even necessarily mean it has to be decorated. So that again kind of flushes out some of that inner narrative of a scolding headspace of this all has to be done, rather than I'm just enjoying the tree and how it's progressing. The other thing is the other side of then when I'm making a list of, well, where don't I feel balanced? It's maybe where I'm putting the pressure on myself, it's not really necessary. So it's kind of like I'm reaching for way up here, but really I just need to be doing the things that are right here, right now. And the only other thing that stood out about the work career, making the money while we're doing our studies, thing that really stood out to me is again, that kind of, it doesn't have to be all done at once. So kind of looking at, well, where could I what is giving me the most flexibility right now? Am I enjoying the most? What could be done at a later time? And with that, I kind of can feel some ease. And also the work piece, though, is that creative resourcefulness. That is there people out in the community that I see that are doing similar jobs to what I actually enjoy, that I could reach out and say, I'm trying to make some money, but I also am studying. And could do you have any extra work right now? So you're kind of learning while you're going, and then it actually pairs up with having some experience when you finish your education. That's all I have to say right now.
That's perfect. Thank you so much.
As it relates to time, I have a very unique way of living my life as it relates to time because of my faith. So I am a Christian, but I am also a Sabbath keeping Christian. What does that mean, and does it relate to my work? So I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. That means that come Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, every single week, we don't do any work, chores, shopping, cooking, any of that stuff from sunset Friday to sunset Saturday. So I always have this rhythm where there's so much stuff that I do during the week, and regardless of what is done or not done, of course, we make sure we have meals prepared, but I don't answer work emails during that time. I don't have to worry about grocery shopping. During that time, it is time to spend with my family, time to spend with friends, focus time that I can have for myself every single week. And everyone that knows us and people in my community, we all have the same schedule, similar schedule. And so what that does is, instead of this kind of constant 7-day race all the time, right? I know I look forward to that time every week, and that helps me to stop the madness, right? And I don't go right up to sunset and go, oh, it's sunset, I'm done all the craziness. No, it helps me to say, you know what? A few hours before that time, let me start organizing. No, don't get me wrong. Sometimes we have a little bit of crazy because we have kids. And so, everything may not get done. But even as long as it's not someone sick or blah, blah, we just stop. And that is really helpful for us because it's not just me stopping. It's myself, my husband, my children. Everybody knows what the schedule is. And then with that break, I'm able to now go, oh man, Saturday night, have some energy, go into Sunday, have some energy. And then it gives me time to just leave all the things behind. So as it comes down to, the decision-making, the organization, and the goal setting, you need to have time to do those things. You can't decision make and organize in your brain and goal set when you're constantly going all the time. And so because of this practice in my family, it gives me a breather to kind of clear my mind, talk to my family, go for a walk, which is where a lot of people get some energy being out in nature and so on and so forth. So we decide that is how we will continue to do these things, because we see the benefit that if we organize our week, we know we got 24 hours where no one's going, did you get the grocery shopping? Did you remember your work project? Did you remember to do this? You got to do, there's no gottas. The only thing we have to do is spend time with each other, relax, take a nap that you can't during the week. And so that really helps me to stay off of, and just a lesson, there were times when I worked 18 hours a day, right? Until, and we still have this practice of taking the Sabbath time off, but I worked so hard during those other 6, I ended up having heart surgery. So, sometimes you have to manage those wants, needs, constant working, because of the adverse effects it has on the body, on the mind, goal setting. I can't reach any goals if I'm lying in a hospital bed, 0, zilch, none. So it helps to give perspective. And I think sometimes it's super important for us to recognize that all those, I used to stay up 2, 3 o'clock in the morning because I had to have all the laundry folded, all of it. I haven't done laundry. Well, my husband does laundry now, right? Like he won't even, like if I go to touch the laundry, he has an attitude because he does it better than me. What am I saying? Before I had to, like Brenda was saying, I had to get the tree up. I had to do all these things because my decision making, my organization, my goal setting was off, right? I had all these things that must have to be done. And now there are things that I realize I have to let go. From a goal setting standpoint, even a good thing, even good things or things that you think are good, you have to leave them by the wayside so that you can decide better, organize better, and goal set better. So that's all I have to say.
That is some good things to say. Thank you so much for those. I think it is much richer to go into the topics in the slides when we've had a chance to share each other's experiences and a little bit about what we wrestle with, about the things that we are aware we're bringing into our decision making, and really anytime we can bring conscientiousness into what has become autopilot, we shift and we're able to be much more intentional. And so thank you for everybody adding your examples and your kind of where you're at and your checkpoint right now, and know that that is all so that we can hang the content of the materials in today's workshop, or when you're looking back on the slides, to some of those examples. So I was just taking some notes about kind of key words I was hearing as people were sharing. I heard a lot about prioritize, schedule, creating predictability, routine, and pacing. Those were some keywords that I heard. And also heard about those various priorities, but perspective on the priorities, perspective on expectations, and how can we utilize hindsight to say, I've seen this come around before. I know how this can go, and that can give you a keen insight going forward so that we're not being reactive and only making decisions that feel like they're being made for us. And finding yourself in a hospital is certainly a decision made for us, but it is often a culmination of a lot of our decisions of dis-ease that has resulted in our bodies being like, well, I tried to tell you in a more subtle way. I was in the hospital a year ago and came out with such conviction that my rat race priorities were going to change. And it's easy to my experience has been, it's been easy to fall back into those. So an ongoing commitment and a checking in on our way that we're making tiny little adjustments to our schedule. You know, the ability to stop once a day or every 3 hours to take a point of gratitude, or once a week for 24 hours. Like, we're all going to find a rhythm that makes sense for us, and that sense making can come from hearing from other people's ideas, that we know maybe how we could try something new that we may not even have thought of, or not realize that the way other people are keeping their calm is because of those things that they are doing that we often don't see written on a schedule. They're not advertised and promoted. And so it's often that we don't know each other's really useful well-being habits that can help us. And so I do invite us to go through a couple of these slide points. You can, I know Brenda's probably keen to have a task. So this one has our outcomes listed about some of the things we'd like to cover that will be in the slide deck, so that if you don't see them word for word that we hit them this morning, you will see them in your slide deck. And we'll also hear on decision making. I wanted to just pause on this one because it says independent decision making, and I just want to clarify that it's not about making decisions in a vacuum or isolation, but it's actually about making personal decisions, being able to choose for you. So the independence is like the self-check. Is this the decision that's right for me? I get to make this choice for me. And that's the shift that happens as we move into adulting, that we can take on some decision making, and we actually get to take on a lot more decision making than we realize, because we've been conditioned to make decisions based on everybody else's priorities, belief systems, and experiences and expectations. So this independent decision making isn't now you have to make a decision all alone without contribution of ideas, without looking around outside and feel really alone and isolated in the process, but rather to feel empowered to make decisions that feel right for you. And often the best way to do that is actually to do check this interdependence, checking with others and seeing how you can get some feedback from other people to help you with your decision making, but knowing that you get to make the choice for yourself. Would you like to pop in there, Tracy, or and then we can go to the next slide. If there's anything else that you wanted to add to that thought, I'd be happy to. In the next one, we're going to talk about the difference between like emotional decisions and rational decisions. So we can start to play around that space.
I have tended to be have a hard time making decisions over the years, and it's often when I am putting that unnecessary pressure on myself and making decisions based more on what I think other people want of me. Kind of like what Brenda was saying about, you know, the family, thinking that the family expects this, but not really. Like they're happy without that, because they're also happy when I'm happy. But one of the other things I do, even when I'm having when I'm working within a capacity with like even like my daughter or my husband, when I ask them to do something 3 times, I've come to realize if they're not doing it, it's often because they don't want to, they can't, because they simply just don't have the time, or they're not able to because they don't have that skill or capability yet. So I started kind of putting it back to myself, saying like, what is blocking me here in my decision making? Where is the resistance? And similar to Natalie, I try to have ritual in my day and in my week. A quote that's one of my favorites is when meditate every day for 20 minutes. And when you're too busy to meditate for an hour. And I find when I actually go out and spend time in nature and take the pressure off of trying to make the decision, I actually can hear my internal conversation in a different way. So I think that's all I'll say right now about decision making, and just why is it important? What I'm deciding, like where is the importance to me? How will that outcome affect me? How will I feel at the end of the day? about the decision I'm making.
Thank you. One of the little self-checks that I use, and I'll try and put some things in the chat as we go too, is I like to ask myself, is my mindset and my attitude about something that I have to do it or that I get to do it? And that can go both for my mindset about it, where it's like, oh man, oh, I have to clean the dishes, and I have to sweep the floor, and I have to pick up the kids, and I have to study. Or sometimes it helps me with switching to an attitude of gratitude, is I get to do those things. So I get to wash the dishes means that we had a meal on them. Well, that's a good thing. And I get to sweep the floors might be a moment of quiet kind of moving meditation for me. And I get to pick up the kids, sure as heck puts me in a better attitude about picking them up, because then my mindset is like, oh, it's good to see them. So one of those things can be helpful to shift just the things that are on my list that I need and am going to do anyway, choosing to feel like I get to do them instead of I have to do them. But also it can be a priority list around your own decisions. You've decided that these are things that have to get done, and you want to make sure that your have-tos are getting done and that you've got things on your list that are get-to-dos, so that you're making sure that you're creating a balance in that way as well. And so if we go to the next slide, there's a little visual that might be helpful.
I also, from a decision-making standpoint, you know, when I talk to my children, we have chores in this family, and, you know, oftentimes, like us, they don't want to do chores. So we may not complain necessarily, but in our mind, we're complaining. And I talk to my children about, you know, as they want to complain or, you know, oh, whatever. I talk about this. Sometimes decisions don't need to be about you. I find that in today's world, we have too much decision making that we have on ourselves that's based on our feelings about our feelings, right? You know, I tell my children, the reason, you know, you may be cranky, but you still have to do X, Y, D. You have to, because it is for the family, it is for the greater good of the people around you. And so I'm not talking about, you know, working yourself to death for other people. I'm talking about the idea that decision making, it shouldn't always be about what you feel about it. Sometimes your family needs it. Sometimes your community needs it. And so even if you feel like a pain in the neck about it, because the greater contribution will be, ultimately, you'll feel better about yourself when you realize that you were able to help someone. But I talk to them about not making your feelings the only thing that matter in decision making. It could be a lot of other things, right? And we start with the chore piece, which is, yeah, you may hate it, you may not like it, you whatever, but in order to run this family smoothly, or in order for your mother not to be overwhelmed and your father not to be overwhelmed as we do the other bigger, greater things, you can decide, you can be upset, but you still have to decide how this thing is going to get taken care of, that it's going to ultimately benefit the family. So I think it's important to realize that not all decision making is on our shoulders. And sometimes when we have an outlook like that, we don't feel that big pressure, because now it's not just us all the time trying to decide.
Yeah, I like that, Natalie. I agree. The thing that stands out as an example, we drive a lot for our daughter's dance, and I don't drive at all. So we rely on my husband to drive our daughter to and from dance, and it's a long drive. And so sometimes there has been this we're not like having to look at, are we going to add in more driving, because we need to consider his time and his day off, and where is there flexibility? How can like, if I'm using my daughter, how, like, I pose those questions to her and her decision making. How can we also appreciate daddy's time, and how can we also do something that we love? And is there compromises that will still feel like it's a win-win?
Thank you. It is really, here when we talk about emotional versus rational decisions, but also as some of the slides describe, like a conscious thought versus unconscious. So conscious decision-making and unconscious decision-making. And we might use the term problem or issue, situation that needs a decision. What we can get caught up in is not realizing that every one of our steps, every single action we take each day is a decision. And sometimes we've moved into autopilot, unconscious decision-making, moving through our lives just based on routine, rut, one mindset, one attitude, one vantage point or perspective. So only looking at it as what's good for me, or only looking at it as I owe it to everybody else. And so by being really conscious of asking yourself questions, why am I doing this? Is this, like, what am I doing? Do I want this? What do I want to get out of this? And how do I want to feel? And maybe how I want to feel isn't like, well, I just want it to be easy for me all the time, because easy for me all the time actually results in a pretty boring, sheltered, highly predictable life that eventually I think people get a little bit bored of. So you probably also want that it's interesting for somebody else, that it builds family, that it builds connection, that it supports these other areas of your wellness. And so I did share a wellness wheel link, which gives a little bit of information about wellness and health from kind of a student's perspective as well. So that's in the chat if you wanted to have that. It's not within the slides, but it might be a nice place to just get some idea of making decisions that you realize pulling on this over here is going to impact those other things over there. And we can make decisions that are going to actually be the best return on investment for us. And certainly the examples that Natalie gave and Tracy offered about decisions that might feel like they're from somebody else's needs perspective will help give better return on investment. I do this, might not be my favorite thing, but I know that doing it with that in mind can help with other pieces, make other parts of my life easier or more comfortable. So I know right now, coming back to some of the students in the group that had talked about those competing priorities of work and study and family and holiday season and whatever kind of traditions come from that, is, as Tracy offered earlier, like, is there a creative way to make one decision that feels like you are benefiting multiple areas of your life at the same time by choosing how you do something and fitting things in? So we want to just kind of increase everything that we're talking about this morning about increasing our intentionality and our consciousness about the choices that we're making and how we can go about that. I have one kind of prompting tool that I was going to pop into the chat, and I want to invite the three that are joining the call. Do you have any questions or thoughts that you've been bringing up, or a story that you want to add to this discussion from your own experiences that we can add to the richness of the dialogue here, ladies?
I want to say something.
Please.
Taking decisions is really difficult sometimes, especially if you have people around you that can be affected also when you are taking those decisions. So you have to think don't just on yourself. You have to think about people that are around you and that they will be affected with that. So it's sometimes difficult, but we have to do it. So maybe the rationale, I don't know how to sometimes we have to think rational or emotional, but I think we can't avoid the emotional part. I don't know how to describe that.
Do you have an example of a decision you've had to make that you can tease apart or unpack a little bit for us, Fabiola, about how you made those decisions? One that you felt really at cross section, or
Well,
one that you're struggling with now?
I think I have been doing many decisions this last time, but this, for example, in these days we are renting an apartment, so I don't know. I am always thinking about my kids, so we have this apartment, and it is kind of expensive for us. So we get this because we couldn't find anything else when we came here. So we get this apartment, but we signed a lease for 1 year. And we now found an apartment that it is cheaper, and it includes every services, I think. And we want to change to that new neighborhood. But when I saw the neighbor, because it's a new neighborhood and maybe I don't know it, I'm kind of thinking, I am thinking about my kids, if they will be fine there, or if they will feel comfortable, if they will feel good changing from one school to another at the middle of the school, how do you say, scholar year?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that kind of things are on my mind. So it's like, but we are also thinking about how much we are going to save, and that because we are paying the school, and it is many things that are going around my mind. But so I just told my husband, okay, you can do you can do the change for the or you can rent the apartment if you want, because I can't take the decision. But it is like, I don't know, and it's kind of difficult for me because I'm thinking about all of those kind of things. Yeah,
Absolutely. Fabiola, as you were speaking, and you're very gracious in last week and this week, I hear a really loving relationship with you and your husband, to be able to balance it and kind of take ping ponging maybe, or taking turns a little bit with that decision making. But I think it is a blessing, and with it great responsibility of a mind that is able to think from so many different angles about something. So being able to hold consideration for all of those factors at once. Not to be gender biased, I have met, but I will say I have met many women who hold that skill of being able to think of all of those contributing factors and the ties and interconnections, the undercurrents that one decision will make here and how it will affect over there. And when we're really able to see such a big picture,
yeah,
it's hard to make decision knowing that right now, this decision, even right now, might affect something right there, or at the very least in the near future. And you have that ability to see into the future a little bit with some predictability, what might be consequence or results of the decision that you make in another area of your life that might not be an intentional consequence or impact, but might just have a parallel one because of the decision that's made in one area or another. And so sometimes when we are really aware, and the more conscious we are and the more self-awareness we have, I've come to learn, can make those decisions feel even more monumental. Even some of the simplest decisions that others will tell us are easy to make can feel more complex because of your capacity to see the complexity of them. So I honor for you. Thank you for sharing your example and for being able to articulate such a complexity that is in every decision making.
Thank you.
And also how really wonderful it is, as I'm sure I can just feel for myself the discomfort of releasing the control, to be able to just tell somebody else, you know what, you're able to make a decision in a way that has you narrowing in. And for some reason, you're capable of cutting every other consideration out of your vision, and you're able to make a decision confidently and assertively. You know what? This will save me so many other discomforts if that decision is made by somebody else. And then I can respond to the things that come up that way. And at some point, it can be really helpful to have a partner or teammate or somebody who is like, you know what, they're my go-to to check in. If I've considered everything, nothing catastrophic is about to unfold because of a decision, I'm going to let that kind of confident decision go forward on somebody else's best advice, because that's going to relieve me of my current spin that I'm in trying to make decision with all of these factors to be considered at once. So Fabiola, thank you for your very, very deep example. Appreciate that.
Thank you so much. I also did that because I know my husband is having a little hard time about the this kind of the economy. So I am also thinking about him, and so it is something like emotionally is affecting him. So we have to think of every people that is around you in order to them to be fine and helpful. Yeah.
And Fabiola, I think what I hear from you and from my own experiences and this time of year, where so often people's decisions are this really complex mix of what's right for everyone, what am I holding as expectations for myself, what am I afraid to let go of because I might let somebody down, what am I letting go of and in the process or committing to, and in the process I'm letting myself down. It's so helpful. And Fabiola, I just want to thank you for being able to give us such a gentle example, is to share the emotional side of the decision-making process with those that you are helping to or asking for the help from, or who you're considering in your decision-making. And it reminds me, I've got kiddos too, who I'm trying to convince to help me around the house or to see things as being a team effort. And so Natalie, when you were describing, like kids, this gotta pony up here and help out because this is a team effort, is so often I can get caught being cranky about my decisions because I'm trying to make decisions that are good for everybody. And in the process, my decisions and all that emotional choice can make me feel frustrated and overwhelmed or anxious. And if I'm not articulating that it's that emotions that are part of the decision-making process that I'm playing into, the people around me are only getting the results of my heightened emotional state being out of whack instead of where it's coming from, which is all of these places that you're describing of everything matters to me. I care about everybody's needs and I want everything to work out really well and be good for everyone. And I think being able to articulate those things brings people on board to be supportive and understanding of our decisions and helpful to see why we are finding it so complex and wanting them to pitch in to the process. So that, I'm sure you've had a chance to read on the slide, but that's why we switched to this one, because it's auto routine can feel very easy and common, but when we start to think about the complexities of it, we see that there's always this unclarity and some of these unknown elements that we're factoring in. Natalie, I saw your video.
I'm a little bit of a devil's advocate here. I do not subscribe to in our lives, and everybody has their decision, that everybody has to be happy. I just do not. So like just chores are an example. Sometimes you have to make big decisions in a family or work or whatever that everybody won't be happy. So I just want to caution on that end. Too often, we want everyone to be happy and content. And some decisions require that somebody's not going to be happy. Okay. It just is. And so sometimes, I'm just talking about my family. It's easier to talk about them. Sometimes you have to make really big decisions that you may make in a heightened sense because you realize that the decisions of the family are not being respected by some of the family members, even your kids. Take care of this because it's going to help the family. And then they're off doing their own thing because there's that selfishness in there. They're thinking about themselves, right? We all have that. And so sometimes they have to bear the consequence of not taking care of the family, and they're upset. And I'm okay with that. And so that can happen in work, that can happen in school, that can happen with friendships. And so there can be structure, there can be problem solving, but there also can be disenfranchisement because somebody feels they got the wrong end of the stick, when truthfully, they brought themselves to that decision based on their own decisions, not to participate, not to do the thing, not to take care of, whatever. And so I like to talk a lot about all things regarding decisions can't happen in this kind of happy, yummy, warmy, situation. Sometimes people cry. Sometimes people got to stay home instead of going out with their friends. And sometimes people got to be disappointed. And so what helps me is that sometimes I feel sad too when I have to discipline my children, and I have to remind myself that this will not always be like this. I won't always be the main decision maker in their lives. They will have to have co-work eventually, professors, and so that helps me to remind myself, don't give in to a comfortable decision because I want to feel okay. I want to feel calm. I want to feel good. Sometimes you need that rub to help the decision-making process, one that is not about comfort.
Absolutely. And I would say so often we agree internally to feel uncomfortable, thinking that it's going to make other people feel comfortable. So we keep being the one who accepts the discomfort and not all happy. It needs to be a shared. Like if somebody doesn't feel happy, but it's not the same person each time, I think you're doing well. It's risky becomes I keep making decisions to make sure everybody else is happy. And I'm not even checking in to realize that I'm the one that's always unhappy with these decisions. I'm always the one holding so much of the burden of the decision making that I'm protecting everybody from feeling the discomfort, which then makes them unable to make independent decisions in their futures as well. And being okay that the decisions that we're making at the end of the day, whether we're talking about families, and some of us will be talking just about our relationships within our family
work
units,
or
parents, or it could be with our friends and our coworkers, is it's not our job to protect other people from the consequences of their decisions. So that's, so if you're starting to realize I'm making a whole bunch of decisions here, trying to sidestep for everybody so that they don't have the discomforts, who's the one that's feeling so uncomfortable? Inevitably, you. When we're talking about goal setting, it's like really hard to get where you're trying to go if you're constantly zigzagging and sidestepping to accommodate everybody else. And people pleasing this time of year, this society is unfortunately a bit gender biased as well. There's an inclination towards that. And I think holding strong to learning your decisions is our internal check. Like this, it doesn't have to feel cozy for me, but it can feel right for me. So feeling right decision doesn't mean it feels a happy decision or an easy decision, but the right decisions can be hard ones. And Sydney's offered us in the chat an example of having to prioritize and sometimes scale back, and clearly making some hard decisions amongst your own priorities. So Sydney, thank you for offering here in the chat, and I can read it out. Or Sydney, did you want to read it out, or can I? Let's see if your sound comes on.
Yeah, sure, I can read it out.
Yeah, or speak to it. Yeah.
So before here, I did the 2+2 program with NSCC. And so before that, I was in my hometown working. And with COVID, I had to like make decisions and stuff. So I stopped playing volleyball and I've played it ever since, like every year since grade 6. And then making sure that, I got the grades that I wanted and did well in school because I have like other goals related to school at Mount St. Vincent and getting like an entrance scholarship. So I had to make sure I maintained the grades. And to do that, I had to make decisions on should I do volleyball, which is only a varsity like every single day, events until like April, or should I focus on school and also maybe not have a job right now? So I decided I shouldn't just get in here in Mount St. Vincent, making sure that I will obtain those grades. And then maybe afterwards, like I'm thinking now, I will be able to handle a job. But I had to like make that decision to make sure I didn't step into doing a job before I wasn't like ready. And you're muted.
Thank you. Sydney, I was gonna just ask if you have hindsight now. I can hear you being like, that was really hard decision at the time. And you've been able to even, I can see the self-reflection that you're continuing to do. And self-reflection is like the power tool for resiliency, and being able to review that you've done hard things before makes it possible to do hard things again. So self-reflection is like the sweet sauce for building up the capacity to keep making decisions and build on your confidence in the decisions that you make. So can you share a little bit more, Sydney, with us about how it felt at the time that you made the decision about that compared to looking back on it and feeling whether it was the best option or not? Is that
Yeah, because I know volleyball, a lot of it is just like, it's pretty rewarding when you do school every single day, that you have something that you like to do on the side and just have fun. And so when I wasn't doing that, it was a little hard. So I focused my time on working at my job, which I do like my job. So that was a good, like, it's not, it wouldn't be good for me to go from working to another job that was pretty stressful. No, I thought it was a really good experience. And then coming here without volleyball, it was hard, but I found other ways to fill my time. I guess I like to be busy. Like, as you can see, I come to this meeting every Friday, but yeah, I think for me, knowing what I need to fill, I guess, my time or like my priorities, for me, it's being active. Like, I also volunteer. So if I wasn't going to play volleyball, I might spend my time doing these activities and going to events.
That's great. Even being able to realize when you created the space, you filled it with something else. Now you can make an informed decision going forward. It's like, well, turns out that if I carve myself out the space, I fill it back in. So what am I gonna be intentional about filling it in with? And it sounds like you're looking ahead to next semester to say, okay, now I can decide how am I gonna intentionally bring something back in. And maybe what you've done is what Tracy had suggested about being able to fill your time that fits two things. You're filling that time, you're keeping busy, and perhaps the content is supporting that goal that you have about your grades and your commitment to education right now. And maybe you're getting more out of that return on investment right now than what the volleyball would have offered. And it's also really valuable to check and see, what void did volleyball leave that your other things couldn't fill, right? And how do you continue to support those other elements? But we moved to this slide that shows some of that process for decision making, and you've just done a really lovely job of being able to offer us an example of really looking at your options, really ranking out your priorities, and making decisions that don't have to be forever. You get to make a decision and then you get to reevaluate at any step along the way. Thank you, Sydney, for sharing that example. Tracy, did you have something there that you wanted to pop in on about
Not really. I just had a few notes that I kind of jotted down about that whole decision-making process. And I really think that often when, for myself, what I recognize is often, you know, decision-making when it's a struggle is because it's rooted in fear. And there's that, and we've talked, that's come up a bit, but I'm just going to name it that, you know, we do have a lot of pressures in our society of what is success and this race to succeed. So there is, that creates this fear of failing, which I also think then really reinforces this fear of rushing to do everything, thinking, like, I had a friend that was so overwhelmed, and I was doing a chat call with her, and she was like, oh, I have this opportunity to go to this workshop and it's going to be fabulous and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, but that workshop will be available again. So it's kind of having that cue to remind ourselves, like, what's the most important right now? Will I have an opportunity to do this again? It's so taking the step back about the fear of failing and rushing to get it all done. Or the opposite side of that, the polarity of it is the frozen, because it does involve some risk taking where everyone isn't going to maybe be happy. But again, like coming back to Fabiola, like, it's like, I've moved, at one point I could say I'd moved more times than I've been alive. And it's only been the last 5 years that I haven't moved. And there is a lot of things in that. But the thing is like, it's kind of like, using that as an example, it's like, which is going to make me more miserable, staying frozen in the indecision making, or taking the risk to see how that unfolds, or having more debt ratio accumulating because of having higher costs and worrying constantly about that, or worrying about the future of whether my kids are going to be happy or not. I'm creating a worry that necessarily, yes, it's good to think about it, but they could be even happier, like in the new place. So again, I'm also thinking that sometimes decision making is about letting go of the of having a crystal ball and predicting the future. It's also kind of about sometimes taking a risk and seeing what can happen. Sometimes when I actually let go of something or make a decision that was for the greater good, I meet somebody new, or a new opportunity opens up, things like that. So the other statement I just wrote down after listening to Natalie was like, it is really important to learning to be okay with disappointment. And a lot of times I'm coming like across my own self, or like adults that are just now learning to do that, because people spend a lot of time trying to control the outcomes all the time. And not knowing how to be okay with being disappointed or scared or sad creates more disease and more worry. So for me, it's about when I'm okay with disappointment, it creates more clarity and a steadier path that I'm able to then decision make more quickly when I'm actually comfortable with disappointment. And kind of comes back to that parenting 101 class, when somebody was like, yeah, like I went to this parenting class and they said, well, after you tell your child 3 times not to play with the folding door, just let them get the finger jammed. And I was like, and I could feel it. But the thing is I've pinched my finger in those doors before, and I'm still here. I'm still sitting here. So I'm not trying to discount things that are really heavy weighted things that people have had to experience, but disappointment and learning from our mistakes is really valuable in what I've come to know in my life. And I wouldn't trade some of the mistakes that I've made. Again, I don't want to sound cliche, but it wasn't a mistake. It gave me valuable learning experiences. And again, the same with the volleyball, that just because we make a decision to put it on hold doesn't mean that we can't do it again. I like to look at it, frame it like, at this point, I'm enriching my life in this new way. Isn't it great that I had this opportunity to spend so much time being physical and learning an exceptional sport? Maybe someday I'll coach young like youth when I'm, doing my new career, things like that. And yeah, and just like that internal sandpaper grit is important, like to feel that grit sometimes and just be like, okay, what am I going to do now?
Thank you for that. In a course that I used to teach at NSCC, we had up on the wall, say, try, fail, adjust. And we had onward, try, fail, adjust, try, fail, adjust, try, achieve. And eventually that sense of like, it's okay if we don't give ourselves a chance to fail, if we don't give ourselves a chance to make a mistake, we have no idea what adjustments we need to make. We just, because we stay so stuck doing the exact same thing we've always done, we don't give ourselves the opportunity to see how doing it differently could actually open up to new windows of possibility or some other way of looking at things. And so it's really valuable. And often, I mean, Tracy, I get right mindset, I'm sure it can be more difficult to even define things as being mistakes and errors and problems and failures because they became just a new opening, right? Fabiola, you picked a place to live and it got you where you were. So it's not a mistake to have found an apartment that turned out to be quite expensive. You look at the conditions that you made your decisions in when you did, and there may not have been a different option. And so that's the other thing that's really important as we look at decision-making models, is that we are reminding ourselves that it is only a snapshot in time of the very variables that are happening right now, and to not compare our hindsight and our knowledge that we get later on to the information, to the decision that we make, because we can only make decisions with what we have available with us right now, and that evolves and changes all the time. So, you know, Sydney gave an example. At the time I made a decision and I knew it was the right decision for me, it created the space for me to do these things. Now I know there's these other resources and I can use my time this way, and I'm really actually, I like my rhythm of being busy. And so I create that space too. And that's going to be a positive thing that I can come to know about that. But it doesn't mean that, oh, actually, I like being busy, so I should have made different decisions, right? Instead, we want to say, from that decision, at the best I knew what to do, I made decisions. And from it, I learned this extra stuff. That self-reflection gives me the chance to say, now I know I'll do things with this new knowledge in play the next time and in my future decisions. So that's how we build that resiliency. And yes, learning so much from our mistakes as we described there. Oh, look at
I kind of create a bank. Because sometimes it will be like 5 years down the road. Like I don't always like my brain doesn't work like that either. That, okay, I made a mistake, like, you know, but there must have been a silver lining. It's sometimes the silver lining shows up like 5 years later, like when my emotional intelligence has had enough even like rest to be able to be like, oh, wow. And then, you know, it's kind of there, but then I kind of create even a chart. Like when I come up with those things that I remember, like, wow, that's what I learned. I kind of mark it down, because then when it's like the brain kind of remembering, and then when you write it, you physically remember it. And then I have like my own chart of how I make decisions. And it's kind of like my decision-making chart. You know, does this decision involve other people? Does this decision, what has worked in the past? What didn't work? Why did it work in the past? Why might it not work now? Things like that. And who's going to benefit long-term, short-term, things like that. And it actually does help me to do that. Like it's the same, coming back to the socks that Natalie, like the laundry that Natalie was talking about, like we have this new love seat that somebody gave us like right around COVID. And now it just is where all my clean clothes go. But at first I felt bad because I used to always fold all my daughter's laundry, but now she freaks out if she can't find socks. But it's teaching her and also helping her to see that life's going to get bigger than socks. Like you're going to have to figure out, if you can't even have enough time to sort your socks, then maybe you need to kind of look and see where you should prioritize things, or reschedule your time, or set aside time, or even ask in a kind way. could you get my socks for me? And be okay then with the response that somebody says. Because I think that's another important thing with decision making, is when we ask for what we need, being able to adjust our expectations, which we talked about earlier, but also being able to adjust the expectations by respecting somebody else's boundaries as well. And then adjusting that, like, okay, that person can't help me, but that doesn't mean that I'm hopeless or helpless. There may be somebody else that can help me.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate some of that summary too. I know that it's 10:15, so I do want everybody to have a chance for a bio break, even if it's just those that have been on camera being able to stand up for a second, or if anybody needs to leave to get a drink or do whatever bio need you have. Brenda, does that make sense for us to take a little?
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. Let's just take, like, I have 10:16. Let's just take the 4 minutes and start back at 10:20, because we've had a lot of great discussion, but I feel like there's a lot of information to still cover. So let's just take the 4 minutes and we'll be back at 10:20.
Awesome. Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Am I overcomplicating the slideshow apps? You can just pop along. It doesn't have to be like that. I just saw. Nick,
It's all good. I actually just switched the slides because maybe they should be the other way. But I think in the past, this one had an activity kind of attached to it, which we kind of do just verbally now. So I think we're ready to get started again. So Julianne, I'm going to go back on mute and leave it up to you.
all right. I do see that we have somebody that's leaving. I'm not sure if take a leave means being gone for the rest of the time. It looks like it was the comment about a thank you there. So there are going to be slideshow resource and some supporting documents can help with some ways and tools that you can start to map and put to paper some goal setting things and some decision making supports. So thank you very much for being with us and appreciate your contributions to the conversation. We had talked about decision making. We talked through things about emotion, motive, and drive, that what was factors playing into decision making, and that decision making might sound like a really current issue, but it's all, when we are conscientious of it, stemming, and every decision is kind of getting made based on some personal goals that we have. If we're not being really deliberate about our goals, then those decisions are going to be made just kind of from a instinctual goal of keeping safe or doing the next right thing, or finding security, finding comfort, finding variety, whatever might be our personal motive, internal drive. But when we are looking forward, we might say, in the next 6 months, I hope something can happen. Or I might actually choose to jump and say, I can imagine that in a few years, into the distance that I can't actually see yet, I want to be in a place in my life where, and you have some kind of feelings about it, it has a light to it, or it has some essence to it, that you've got a feeling about what it is, or a vision about what it is that you want to aim for. And then taking that and working it backwards can be a way that we can start to move towards something with a little more intention than just light at the end of the tunnel. You know, we can kind of know what it is out there that we're hoping to work towards, the feelings of it or the essence of it. And then because of that, make sure that the decisions we're making on short-term and medium-term timelines are aligning to that goal. And as broad as that distant goal might be, we can get more specific about our more immediate goals that are going to help move us in that direction. So this is an invitation. We'll just do it verbally or in the chat. Those that are here want to add a goal that you have been holding on to, a goal that you're aiming for right now. And then you can tell us kind of a timeline associated to it. Short-term, medium, long-term goal that you've got. You want to add anything in there? You might just want to hold one too in your thoughts. You don't necessarily have to share goals. They can be intimate and personal in nature. And I know sometimes they're driven really subconsciously, not unconsciously, but they're kind of below the surface. We're kind of operating from some goals. Anybody who's made the kind of commitment that you have to be active in continued education clearly have a goal, and probably have some unspoken, possibly, visions of what those steps that you're taking right now to be active in your education are going to lead you to. Fabiola, you certainly spoke in your descriptions a little bit.
Yeah, I was trying to talk, but I don't know if you can hear some noise here, but it's okay. I think it's okay, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's great. Anything else?
Okay, well, for now, my goal is focus in this semester that is almost done, and it is to finish the courses with good scores, and also passing the courses. So I always try to do my best and delivering all the homeworks, never miss every homework, which was something that yesterday I was working and I forgot one and I was so frustrated. But I talked with my professor. He said me that I can send it for Saturday. And something that I try to do is that to complete every homework, because some points that we can get that will be helpful to have great scores and finish the courses very well without problems to passing them. And for now, that's my goal. But also I have another that is finish the year with the in a good way with the 2 semesters that I can also finish the courses and passing them. And so what I am doing is not to take too much courses because I am also working. So I try to balance the work with the homework and those things. So for now, those are my, I know the diploma is for 2 years, but I try to divide it in periods.
And how did you, I think that's great, Fabiola. You're starting to speak to some of the steps and strategies to really start playing with our goals from just being a vision to starting to have some details associated to it that really make it successful. And Brenda has another slide to put up there, maybe familiar. Some people may have heard of SMART goals as an acronym that helps give us some of those check-ins. And Fabiola, as you were speaking, I heard specifics about the courses you're taking and the assignments that you have, the measurables being some of those checkpoints about the course that you're currently in and how many of them you're taking. Certainly speaks to that attainability. You were checking to say, how much can I do right now, knowing that I've got this much else on my plate. This isn't the only thing. We usually don't only have one goal. We kind of have a bunch of goals on the go in a life, and getting those measurable points, right? Which ones do I need to hit? And you've been successful, or organization helps. So we get caught and we miss something. But it sounds like relationship with your professor also meant a lot, and your previous decisions support that little slip because you've proven yourself to be a strong student and a caring, concerned student. So it's much easier for anybody around us, but in your example, professor, to know your habits and know your integrity based on your previous demonstrations, and people around you having a lot more leeway and understanding when you speak up to those things and come back and ask for accommodations, making those little adjustments as you go. Even that tiny little one, I can get it in over the weekend, is proof that we can set goals and we can also have and give ourselves flexibility. Commitment to the goal is what gets proven over time, and other people see it and then they're supporting us in that process. So again, thank you, Fabiola, for your example. And if there's anything you wanted to add based on what you saw there, and then we'll go to Sydney because she's got an example as well. So go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah. Sydney, you had given the example rate probably in that short-term time frame that you've identified in the next few weeks, the exams that are coming up, and it, from what you've told us earlier in your conversation, these are steps that you see towards your bigger goal, your midterm goal of maintaining that scholarship that you have and the qualifications for that. And congratulations again, shows that hard work paves the way, right? So you've got that reputation already behind you and you've set standards for yourself. but you're pacing yourself, as I heard you speak to already this morning, so that you can make sure that those are met, and also that they're moving you towards what's coming after that. And managing to still fit us in for your morning, despite the 2 exams to study for, says a lot about your time management, and that you're able to prioritize and make both those things attainable. Did you have anything you want to add, Sydney?
I was just going to say something really quick, Julianne. One of the things that I like when I'm hearing both what Fabiola has to say, as well as Sydney, is they're doing kind of what I think about as a goal pyramid. So they have kind of a key goal up at the top, and it's, you know, for Fabiola, for both of you, really, it's to, you know, finish in 2 years by the sounds of it. So that's kind of your longer term goal, is that 2-year one. And, you know, graduate is the piece, but you're breaking it down. So, you know, you're breaking it down either course by course or exam by exam, and then bringing it right down to what do I have to do on a daily basis to get to that big goal at the top. And, you know, Sydney has said, study each day to prepare and reach that. Fabiola has said, I do every bit of homework that is assigned because I get extra points. So all of those points are rolling up into the big goal. So when I think about a goal, I always kind of think about a goal pyramid with the main goal at the top. And then in order to reach that, what do I have to do? In order to reach that, what do I have to do? In order to reach that, what are the little everyday things that make the difference? And I think that is just a key piece of, you know, the whole goal setting piece, is figuring out the daily tasks to get to the big goal.
Yes. And I have a goal setting pyramid that I had from junior achievement course years ago that I adapted minorly. It might be a copyright infringement, but thank you very much for giving me permission every time to share it with any of the students that I work with, because it has been a wonderful tool that I do rely on heavily. My brain works much better in shapes than in linear fashion, and so I'm always glad to have a shape go along with something. It gives you a little bit more dimension. The triangle is a good one for that. Thank you for bringing that up. And when we start to think about like the really detailed things, you know, that's when the nitty gritty gets in. So we get into these pieces that are like, well, I want it. And I mean, I made a commitment and I'm showing up for my classes, or I went to the thing, I did the thing, I got my big to-do list. And those can feel like the real heavy steps and the real conscious efforts that we have to say, no, I've got a goal that I'm going for. And so huge credit to everybody who participates in this program. I mean, for those of you that are here right down to the last session, but for everybody that participated in this along the way, because anybody who's not here today is prioritizing something else that has come up and been added to their plate. And so congratulations to all of you for holding your vision and continuing to do steps that are moving you towards it. And I find sometimes it is those of us who have clarity of goal setting, value that, and appreciate this self-reflective work that it takes to keep moving forward. It can actually become tricky, and we can get a little hard on ourselves when the nitty-gritty pieces that we maybe don't even notice end up creeping in and getting in our way of some things. Or, you know, I heard that little bit of disappointment about missing getting an assignment in, but I was so glad to hear you bounce back, that resiliency of looking back like, no, you know, I was able to ask the questions and connect with the person and reassure them that I have good intentions and get that next step. So we'll spend a little bit of time here playing around with what some of those nitty gritties are. You know, we talked about organization and time management. There's a book called Atomic Habits. I don't know if anybody here has read that book. The first name is James. I'm terrible with names, so I don't remember. But the book Atomic Habits talks about like little micro steps each that we can build onto each other, so that getting to the goals, even those this week goals, do become attainable, because often we can have a really big goal, we can have clear midterm goals, and even the like, this week I'm going to do that studying, can be what gets caught up. Like, what do I actually need to do this hour? Tracy said we need to stop every 3 hours and have gratitude for something. We need to, Natalie said we need to stop every week, and or we don't all need to, but that's the approach you've taken, to stop and reset and just have pause. And anything that we can be doing, if we've got goals that include aspects of how to get them done that we have to be thinking about now so that we're ready for them down the road, it's really helpful to break it down into all kinds of elements. So we've talked about financial elements that can come along with some of this. You're doing your time as a resource. Finances can be a resource that we need to manage now so that we have them for later as well. Relationship building, I heard about that. You're doing the little bits of relationship building now so that you can call on those relationships later. You're doing those choices about what you're choosing to spend your time with, Sydney, so that you're learning and participating in community connections while you're studying that is aligned with those goals. So those are little micro pieces that you're doing right now that are going to be adding up to meeting those goals as well. And I think if we haven't checked our resource list and said, I might not need it right now, but it's part of the end vision. So how do I make sure I bring those aspects back to my why I'm doing it, my motivation, the people I want to be around while I'm doing it, so that when I get there to that end goal, I don't want to arrive and be like, well, now I'm done. Nothing after that. So I want to keep being able to move forward, and also not arrive and be like, this is not what I hoped it would be. Because we want to be able to adjust and adapt as we go with each step. And then that way we can say, oh yeah, no, I'm making this decision to adjust on purpose, because otherwise it might have been my goal to have it look like that. But I'm realizing now I want it to shift a little bit so that it's right for me and those decisions, and I'm making adjustments as I go. So we've got some elements to there. Tracy, did you want to put some pieces in here and talking about breaking down goals into daily habits or daily steps that you want to put our attention on?
Not a lot more. I've been using that SMART. I took an entrepreneur program in 1997 with the Department of Education. And that's when they introduced it to me. And I've been using it ever since. And the other piece is that also what you touched on at the end is always coming back to do a check-in and reevaluate and be okay with adjusting. Because I like to think as my goals now as intentions. This is my intention, but it may need to shift. So I'm not so fixed mindset. That also keeps me open and alert to what feels good, what doesn't feel quite right, and where I might need more help, or even what maybe needs to be put aside for the time being, things like that. And also there used to be a one that we used to use, and I can't remember, but the piece that always stood out in it was was labeling each thing that had to happen as A, B, C, or D, but the D was for delegate. And again, that ties back into what we were saying earlier, is that sometimes we need to delegate or do it for the greater good. So it's always kind of looking at that, like what has to happen right now, what can happen later down the road, and what can I delegate to other people. Yeah, and I work a lot with mind maps. So I'll put my core, like my piece right in the middle of what that's going to be, and then also tie in that kind of wheel of my happiness index of what that involves, like whether it's my spirituality and my income and my physical fitness and my work. And so I'll do that for everything. Like even like right now I'll use I'm really concentrating on my business development around establishing myself as a professional writer, and using the creative well-being that I've been doing predominantly focused around writing. And so I have short, medium, and long-term goals within that. So for instance, like I might submit to a contest a couple times a year. And then I might have in there that I'm going to write 4 short stories a year or 1 every month. But my long-term goal is I'm going to publish a novel, and I'm working on that novel. And then there's those steps in between, like I have my writers group that I continue to go to. I also like look at a continuing education course that I can take. I'll look around for the freebies because you can learn so much in those refreshers. And then I'm looking at how much time I'm going to devote into my business development, how much I'm going to be using for connecting and networking. And my writing group, we also have a chart. So we actually will go in a shared document, and we have like, how many words did you write? What were you writing? How did you feel while you were writing it? And what lit your fire? Those are our categories right now in our chart. So that's just an example. So again, even though everything on my mind map's focused around my writing, there's also these other wheels that kind of like spokes that come out that is about that. I also have this other goal of I want to travel. I have to concentrate on my health and wellness and my income and my family. And my income is tied into me generating more business from my writing. So there's kind of that. Also, the income is also like a goal within the goal, because it's like, okay, well, what is a realistic income for me? How much do I comfortably want to generate? And to kind of look at, well, what do I need to do that? So breaking down what goals there are that will keep me focused, in the sense of, well, do I really need to take on that other job? Because my goal over here was that I wanted to make $25,000 so that we have more income in a single income family, say. That's an example. It's like, well, no, if I'm already hitting that target, is it, maybe it's about like, I don't need to add in more work. So starting to ramble.
Thank you. No, I'm not rambling at all. There's no such thing as a tangent. And that was not a tangent at all. In fact, it was just leading us to the next pieces. And Tracy, we have a slide coming up in a couple that starts giving examples of organizational tools. And I wondered if those headings that you just described from your writing groups, and like, I know it ends with the, kind of sparks your fire, which I love that piece. If you could give the headings, do you mind just typing them into the chat too, so that everybody can have them? Just those headings that you use on your table. Oh, I know that you're on mute again, or still, or.
Again, that comes into specific to my goal, because it was like, how many words did I write? So yeah. Again, that comes into like the SMART, like specifically that chart is dedicated to that. So, but I'll write those in. Yeah.
Because I think that one of the things that, like you said, your word count became your currency. And I put the financial goals sheet up slide up, because we can get caught on money being our description of our resource. But like Tracy said, sometimes which resource we have to trade, to get financial accomplishment, we're trading perhaps our output of energetic resource or time resource. And so being able to say which of those ones has the highest priorities, which of those resources are the ones that I'm counting as things that I want to create or share, how much, like kind of that, you can still talk about it in the same way that you look at traditional financial input and output, right? So how much do I have to put in? How much do I want to get out? Vice versa. And so when we're talking about our goals, as far away as they might be, bringing your resource element back to your current day too. So if the financial goal is to be at a certain income level, or to save up a certain amount, or to be prepared with a certain amount in a bank account so that you can do something with it, breaking it down to like, okay, if that's the long-term goal, how much am I trying to make over a period of time, right? So even if word count is your resource, you're saying at the end, I want to have 500,000 words. I have no idea. That sounds like a huge number. Tracy, what is your number that you guys work on in your team efforts during your writing goals?
Pardon?
What is your writing goal? I said 500,000. That sounds extraordinary to me.
Oh, it's always different, but like this past month, we were all aiming for 50,000 words just because it was National Novel Writing Month. So yeah, but generally we set a goal because again, like there's that writer's block thing, creativity fluctuates. Also, again, that currency of sometimes you're doing things that are related to writing but aren't writing. So it's kind of like keeping that tally of everything that I was doing that was related to writing. Sometimes that's talking to another author, sometimes that's going to support somebody else that's written a book that, you know, happens to be at a library where you might be around all kinds of books and meet other people. Things like that. So, but typically we write between, well, I write between 500 words to 2,500 words a day.
Yeah, thank you. So speaking about it as your resource inputs and outputs, and like a resource bank, right? Where you have transactionally, you're putting some in and you're taking some out. You can be breaking it down. You say like right now, the tangible thing that I really need is a certain number of words or a certain number of dollars or a certain grade. And then also you can put it into the same efforts when you're talking about your time. I need to create this much time in order to get something done. So how much time am I going to break that down into contributing to that goal each day or each week? And you may also say, in order to achieve this, part of the resource that I need to put towards it is collaboration or creativity, inspiration. And so often we think the grind of doing something is how we get it done. And sometimes we can take a quantum leap further into our goals when we are around inspiration and open to inspiration, and having epiphanies or having chance encounters that can be helpful. But just leaving it all up to luck and trust and hope while we sit in our bedrooms doesn't necessarily get anything done. And so I find a reflective practice here is helpful in our organization as well, and say, what have I done? What have I noticed get done in the time that I've been working already? Stopping and saying, you know, yesterday, what did I get done yesterday that actually moved me towards my goals? Maybe things that I didn't give credit, didn't plan for, but when I look back on them, I can give some credit to them. And those can be things and say, you know what, actually it took a little bit of time to do this instead, but while I was doing it, this good thing came of that. Or, you know, I took a break from studying, but while I took a break, I went and had this activity, and, you know, actually referencing that activity is going to help me remember that content. And it's going to come to mind when I'm doing that exam, because that event, that comment that somebody else made, that explanation that somebody else gave is going to help me remember that material. So giving yourself a chance to give credit to what has happened that's helping you move towards the goal just keeps you open to seeing it that way. So our next slide is kind of layering in intentionality about organization. Tracy used her example for us of doing mind mapping as a way of organizing our goals and organizing our resources. And Brenda gave the example of a pyramid. So we can put that next slide up just to have it as content. And then Fabiola or Sydney and Natalie, anybody want to share what you do as an organizational skill or tool that helps you get really specific about your goals or keep them top of mind?
I'll use this one. I'm a to-do list person, right? So I have a big to-do list person. Sydney's saying the same thing in chat. But what I have found is here at the house, when we're talking about the team effort and everybody kind of pitching in, Patrick, my partner, gets overwhelmed by very large to-do lists. So instead, as we come up to the weekend, I will put maybe 3 or 4 things on his to-do list. So he loves to be able to check them off. So it might be 3 kind of bigger things, but I'll break it down into 3 or 4 steps to accomplish that one thing on the top. And then he feels better because he's making more check marks. But I've also learned if I give him the big list, like these are all the things we should do this month, he gets overwhelmed. There's too much. I don't even know where to start. Whereas if I point it out, here's 2 or 3 pieces, that's all he needs. And I do the same thing with my work. So, I mean, I do a monthly one or sometimes a weekly one, and it's just me and a notepad, and I can check them off as I go down the list. So I'm a big to-do list person. That's my go-to.
Great. And on the next slide, we have some kind of highlightable points. So we can keep that up as others are giving their examples. A task board, a whiteboard, you talked about the to-do lists. My husband is very similar. He wants like the tangible task and not my great big like dreams and visions written as one bullet point. And so it's like my concept of list and his concept of list are very different. I like the activity of just making a list, and then I never need to look at it again. And 3 months later, I look at it, I'm like, oh, look at all these things that I've gotten done. Or, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I should go to Barbados sometime in my life. Why is that a bullet point on the list? Silliness. So my approach to lists, and that I call it a list, stresses him out, because to him, lists are supposed to be things that you can get done before the end of the day or week. And so expectations and understanding why you're using your tool is helpful as well. Anybody else have resource tools? One of the reasons that I like to point these things out is because so often these are taboo, or they're silent tricks and tools, life hacks that people are using in their own world. And we're looking out to other people thinking, how do they have it all figured out? How do they keep themselves so organized? And it's actually, they've got a tool. They're not doing it all alone. They're not just keeping it all in their head like that. So Natalie, what's one of your hacks?
I don't know if I have a hack per se. I'm very organized in certain things, and other things I'm not. It's life. But scheduling things is important. My husband, from the time we got married, he sees talking about issues or scheduling as something to freak out about, right? And, fast forward 16 years, now he puts things in his schedule and they pop up. I remember one time, I don't know, we were married, 5 years, and we're like, we're going to discuss the budget. So I sent him an invite on Gmail for Google Calendar, and it said discussion budget. He calls back with some kind of attitude. What is this all about? What are we? I mean, we were 5 years. Yeah, right. I think we were 3 or 5 years married. I don't know. In that beginning, very, very first few years when you're learning each other, how to interact with each other. Anyhow, now he knows, he puts them in he has a little alarm. He doesn't remember everything, but that helps him and it helps me. Sometimes we forget things, but I do a list. I have a list sometimes on the fridge if things are really like gotta really get done. I also sit down and talk to my family, or we sit down, not I, but my husband and I. If we have some things that we have to do, we'll be eating dinner and we said, okay, this week we have this, and this, and you have to do this, and this. And so they've gotten accustomed to, my kids have gotten kind of accustomed to that. And so that works fairly well as it is right now. But for kind of like big goal setting, for several years, we would do a list kind of in January-ish. Sometimes we remember, sometimes we don't. I would say the last 16 years, we've maybe done it 8 to 10 times, where at the beginning of January, we'll do a wish list where everybody's together. We'll do a task list. These things got to get done this year. We'll do kind of a community list, how we're going to help others, and then places we want to go. And then we kind of hang them up close to the dining room table, and then we can see them as we check them off. And so sometimes they are, wild things. I was born in Barbados, so sometimes they are things like, you're going to go to Barbados right? And then somebody wants to go to Mexico. I'm like, buddy, we cannot go to Barbados and Mexico and London and France. Like, it's not going to happen in 1 year. It's just not. But it helps to see that everybody has a goal, even if they know that it may not all happen. So that kind of keeps people kind of motivated. And sometimes, surprisingly, we may not bring it to fruition, but someone else might see our goal and help us with it. So having it there is a really good thing.
I love that piece of advice. Sharing it with the team that is going to help make it happen. I heard that repeatedly in some of the different things that you're saying. Really intentionally, like the teammate being like the person who helps you be able to achieve the goal. Like if you have a financial goal, but it's a shared financial goal, you have a partner that you're financially managing together with, they're part of the success of that plan. It could be that you have somebody that's part of the success plan right now, you know, instructors and teachers. You're keeping in conversation with a teacher who can help, or instructor that you spoke about, who can adjust the timeline of to meet a goal, because they have shared contributing authority to the achievement of the goal. So you can actually, you know, see them as a partner in achieving the goal. You can have your really intentional team. You can have a created team, whether it's your work team, your classmates and friends, your family, or a chosen team. There's lots of teams that are created now in the online world that you can access to that are like accountability buddies. And you can just check in, pick a time and just be like, we all have like monotonous tasks we have to get done. We just need to sit and get a task finished. And we just have accountability buddies. We all agree, okay, for this hour, we're doing the sitting and doing it and getting it done. And we'll check in with each other at the end of the hour. And sometimes just having somebody else who's also in the zone. And you can use people that don't know you're using them for that. You can go to a library and just sit next to somebody who's often there for a long stretch of time looking studious, and saddle up nearby so that you kind of get the good vibe. So I think expanding your circle of support in getting your goals met is helpful. Shared calendars can be a really good strategy too. Getting each on, at least sharing your calendars with yourself. I don't know how many times I'm struggling with, I have it on paper and I also need to get it digital. So if you're able to use digital tools as well, and automate as much as you can so that you're being reminded of things, and then your goals you don't lose sight of your goals because they're coming back up to be pointed out to you. So a couple of suggestions that came from that chat. Ladies, you have, Fabiola or Sydney, did you have any online tools or secret hacks and tricks that you wanted to leave us with that we may not already know of? A great app that you use, or a sticky note system? It doesn't matter to me, but something that you wanted to offer is a tool that you use to stay on track with your goal.
I need to investigate a little more about those kind of tools, but what I am using right now is the calendar on my phone. So I just put all in the calendar and also in the hours that it shows. So every day I try to check the calendar and see what I have to do that day, because I can't forget. Now I think this is the part of my life where I have been more busy and I having more activity. So if I don't put something, I can forget it, as I forgot my assignment last night.
Of course.
Yeah.
And you have so many compartments of life that they're not, it's the same 24 hours, right? You have to be remembering that there's something for the kids while you're at work, not only when you're in front of the kids, right? In order to keep track of it. So so sharing calendars and setting extra reminders that pop up can be really helpful. Sydney, go ahead.
Thank you.
Yeah, so for me, I kind of write all my goals everywhere as I see them because I'm constantly kind of adjusting to them. So I have a huge whiteboard in my room for more weekly goals where I don't have to constantly wipe them every single day. And then I like to write things out by hand. So depending on like if new information comes up about my class and we have deadlines, I will kind of immediately look at my weekly schedule and I'll write out like Monday, these are what I have to do. Tuesday, this is what I have to do. and depend on, I guess, the day, because obviously I'm not gonna strictly follow it. Like things will come up, or like I just want to focus on one thing more than what I set on my to-do list. So I'll constantly adjust them. I'm constantly writing it down. If it's not on paper, I don't have it. It's in my notes on my phone. And I'm setting alarms a lot just because I am a forgetful person. So I'll make sure that if I really have to get something done, I'm gonna set these alarms so I don't miss them.
So good. It sounds like we're preaching to the converted here, of those of you that have strategies and tools, but do keep peeking to others for ideas, and find a joy in what you do. Because, whether it is the joy of being able to reorganize it or color code it, or put smiley faces beside it and sticky notes, or take pictures of your accomplishments. Sometimes it's like thinking about what needs to get done is overwhelming, and so shifting to keeping track of what you did get done can be a helpful alternative. And then taking those rests. So as we conclude, I just thank you for taking your time. I applaud you for your determination at this time, and the work that you're doing, and the ability to pause and take break and balance. I know Tracy's popping in there to offer something in the text to leave you there. So as the time transitions, and the busy time of year for other priorities mounts, I wish you all time to rest and reflect, and then you can reset. And that way you'll be able to pick all of these goals and things up again, knowing that it's okay to take a break. Tracy, did you have a final thought you wanted to offer there? Oh, I did see you.
Nothing other than I appreciate it being here today, and I feel inspired to set some new goals for the new year, and I'm wishing everyone an abundance of happy New Year goal setting and prosperous success in achieving them.
Thank you so much. Thank you, ladies, for being here, Brenda and Natalie, for having us.
Well, and I just want to say thank you to Julianne and Tracy, and to Natalie, and to Sydney and Fabiola for joining us every week, and for taking the lead today, Julianne and Tracy. I'm excited that we're finished, but I'm also a little disappointed that we're finished. And we talk about setting alarms. I've got an alarm every Friday morning at 8:30 for the last 6 weeks, so I didn't forget that we had #adulting today, because I am typically off on Fridays, but been happy to be here for the last few weeks doing this. So I just want to say thank you to everybody. Natalie, I will send you the recording next week as usual, and then I believe Natalie will roll that out to all of the students who have been registered. So even if they didn't make it to a specific session, they can have the opportunity to see the recording. It is a raw recording. The break is in there. All of those things are in there. Yes, no classes on Friday. So that's one of the reasons we do it on Fridays, because most of the students don't have classes. So it fits into their schedule quite well as well. But really want to thank Fabiola and Sydney. You two kind of have been our stars the whole 6 weeks, certainly with sharing your thoughts and bringing your perspective to a lot of the discussions that we've been having. And I really appreciate that. I know it can be a little bit intimidating to speak on camera, especially with your peers. So thank you, everyone. And thank you, Natalie. I look forward to having JA do this all again next year. I was just going to say to doing this all next year, but I will be retired by next year. So that's one of my goals, has been the retirement piece, and how do I make that work? So excited. End of March, I will be retired.
Wow.
Very sad. And
Good luck. Good luck to you, Brenda. We know that Friday was, not supposed to be on your schedule, do not work on Friday.
No,
I respect that.
Yeah, exactly. But, I know it works best for the students. And so, that's what JA is all about, is what's best for the students. And so we always make that work, and I'm happy to be here. And I learn new things every time as well. All right, I'm going to end the recording. How do I do that again? I'm going to stop my sharing. There we go. Then I'm going to end the recording. Yes.